Okay guys, let's begin. ठीक है? So पास ही कर दूं, मैं खुद ही अपना लिख लेंगे नाम. So guys, something about me. I joined Jamia Hamdard in 2014. ठीक है? Before 2014, I was working as a software developer since 2005. So around 9 years of software development experience in various companies. I was working in CDEC, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, Pune division, as a staff scientist. Then I worked for Amdocs, which is a communication giant in Pune. Then I moved to Sapient, Gurgaon. I worked there for around 3 years. Then I moved to CPA Global. That's a company in Pune. It's a company which deals with it's a cloud platform for IP, intellectual property management. So there I worked for around 1.5 years. Then I decided to move here in academics. In fact, I started my career as an academic. So the first job that I got was in Aligarh Muslim University, Polytechnic. There I was working as a temporary lecturer for around 6 months. I worked there, and that was the period when I was doing my MTech as well. So MTech, after third semester, I joined there as a teacher. Then I moved to IP University. There I have worked for around 9 months. Then was the time when I got the offer from IRCTC as well as CDEC, and I joined CDEC company. CDEC was a central government company. So it's a mixed blend of experience from my end. It will be both IT experience as well as education experience that you will get from me. So yeah, please. So see, you just feel that about the subject, you are in best hands. Okay, it's up to you how much you can expect from me. ठीक है? जावा ही नहीं, मतलब डिफरेंट बिजनेस डोमेन की अगर मैं बात करूं तो कम्युनिकेशन डोमेन पर मैंने काम किया है, ई गवर्नेंस पे काम किया है, ठीक है, इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी पे काम किया है, जावा एज अ कोर टेक्नोलॉजी, while there were some branches of other things which have come while my career inside my career. So ये सारी चीजें मतलब ले दे करके कहानी ये है कि आप जावा टेक्नोलॉजी पे जितना आगे जाना चाहोगे उतने आगे मैं आपको ले जा सकता हूँ. ठीक है, डिपेंड्स अपॉन यू नो कि आपके अंदर कितनी सलाहियत है, आपके अंदर कितनी चाह है सीखने की. ठीक है, तो अभी हमारे सिलेबस का जो पार्ट है वो तो सिर्फ कोर जावा का पार्ट है. कोर जावा के अलावा कोर जावा इज समथिंग व्हिच विल अलाउ यू टू डेवलप a kind of console application, but that's not the very limited thing. It's when you learn core Java, it means that you are learning all the object oriented concept. ठीक है, पहले भी आपने C++ वगैरह पढ़ा होगा. ठीक है, पढ़ा है ना, C लैंग्वेज भी पढ़ा होगा. और कोई लैंग्वेज पढ़ी है? पाइथन पढ़ी है. पाइथन क्या है? अकेले नहीं पढ़ी है, कोई बात नहीं, एक्सपीरियंस सबका काम आएगा. पाइथन वैसे किस तरह की लैंग्वेज है? इसको आप कंपाइल्ड लैंग्वेज कहेंगे, इंटरप्रेटेड लैंग्वेज कहेंगे, या समथिंग इन बिटवीन कंपाइल्ड एंड इंटरप्रेटेड, इसको कैसे वो कहेंगे, क्या कहेंगे, कैसे? नहीं, उससे मतलब नहीं है. लंबे छोटे का मतलब ही नहीं है, दोनों का पर्पस अलग अलग है. पाइथन आपकी डाटा साइंस की तरफ ओरिएंटेड होती है, राइट? कितना लंबा प्रोग्राम बन रहा है, कितना छोटा प्रोग्राम बन रहा है, उससे मतलब ही नहीं है. ठीक है, वहाँ पे आपके पास क्या है कि डाटा साइंस की लाइब्रेरीज है आपके पास, राइट? तो लाइब्रेरीज में ऑलरेडी मॉड्यूल कोडेड है. आप क्या करते हैं, फंक्शन कॉल करते हैं और उन मॉड्यूल को यूज करते हैं. ग्राफ प्लॉट करना है फॉर एग्जाम्पल, ठीक है, आपको फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपको डाटा फ्रेम बनाना है. ठीक है, इस तरह काम कराने, डाटा फ्रेम बनाएंगे, फर्स्ट स्टेप हुआ, उसके बाद ही आप उसको कुछ कर पाएंगे, राइट? So basically you work with the data, and that's a language which has a huge library of manipulation with the data. whether it's a mathematical manipulation or whether it's something like a graphical representation. So Python is for that purpose. It has its core strength in data science, right? Just because of the libraries. Okay. Whereas when you go for languages like Java technology, Java में आप you start with the core Java, then there is JE part, Java Enterprise Edition part, then there are various frameworks. This is just an introductory class, so I am going beyond my limits of the subject, uh, just to give an understanding where you stand and what is there out to learn, right? So when you start with Java, you will see that okay, it's not specifically for a kind of specified work like data science, where Python is something which has an exceptional, catch, right? However, Java can be used for data science. There are various libraries, but not as strong as Python. Okay, Python or the competitive platforms which are available. Okay, इस तरह के. Java is something for scalability. Scalability in terms like, for example, you must have seen IRCTC or the e-commerce platform. ठीक है, e-commerce platform में क्या होता है, आपका एप्लीकेशन है, पूरा अमेजन का एप्लीकेशन है, फ्लिपकार्ट का एप्लीकेशन है, वो सारे हॉस्टेड है. उसमें दो पार्ट होते हैं, एक तो ग्राफिकल यूजर इंटरफेस होता है जिसको आप देखते हैं, राइट. तो उसमें कई चीजें होती हैं, उसमें HTML भी होता है, CSS, JavaScript. There are components of the framework if they depend upon the framework. So there are so many things which are blended together to form a very good, a wonderful experience of a graphical user interface. Similarly, there is something on the back end. When you submit a form, that form has to communicate over the internet, reach to some component which is probably written in the core Java that we are going to learn, and that is the brain of the application. Okay. UI is the interface, right? If you want to see, you have to see from eyes, right? If you want to speak, you have to use your mouth or ears to listen. So these are the mechanisms or the ways to interface with others, right? Similarly, your brain is something which is working behind to process all whatever you see, whatever you hear, or whatever you speak, right? Or talk. Okay. Brain is something which is processing the data. So what you are going to learn in core Java that will help you to code that part of the application which is going to process all the data which comes from the UI, whether through the internet or within the network or from within the same machine. A desktop application, I mean, right? Okay. Now what happens, for example, see, Umar Naeem is trying to ask something. Just hold on, guys. Yeah, Umar, please speak. ऑनलाइन और ऑफलाइन क्लास मिक्स करना एक बहुत ही बुरा आइडिया है जी. So basically what happens, if you talk about an e-commerce application, for example, okay, normally the application runs very nicely with a good speed, right? Then comes the festive season when they give lots of discount or they pretend to give lots of discount sometimes, right? But at that time the load on that particular application becomes very, very high. Okay. You must have witnessed that if you are applying for say for example for any online examination or for admissions, when the last date comes, or even for the IRCTC for that matter, when the date comes closer of the application closed down, then there's a huge load on the application website and the website tends to get slower. Then what happens? Sometimes it even blocks. Okay. It's become irresponsive. आप उसको सबमिट प्रेस करना चाह रहे हैं, वो सबमिट हो ही नहीं रहा है. ठीक है, थोड़ी देर बाद बोलेगा इट कैन नॉट कनेक्ट, नो रिस्पॉन्स फ्रॉम द सर्वर, एंड देन यू हैव टू स्टार्ट द होल प्रोसेस अगेन एंड अगेन, राइट. तो पीछे बैकएंड में क्या हो रहा है, जो आपने छोटा सा कोड लिख रखा है, फॉर एग्जांपल इन कोर जावा और सी प्लस प्लस, ठीक है, इन एनी ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज, मे बी सी शार्प व्हिच इज फ्रॉम माइक्रोसॉफ्ट. So what happens when the data comes there, it has to process the data. Maybe it has to put something into the database, Maybe it has to fetch some record according to the information that you are submitting in the form from the database, and then generate some kind of information back to you. Okay. For example, if you are trying to book a ticket, you are going to fill certain information about how many passengers are traveling, what class they want to travel, what date you are going to book, which train, and everything. So it is going to feed the details about the train as well from the database, right? It is going to allow you to pay through the payment gateway. Various options of payment gateway are there. There is another interaction. So all this happens. Then finally, a PDF is generated, which is sent on the mail. An SMS is sent on your phone that your ticket has been booked. So a lot of things are happening in the background. With all these things happening in the background, if there is more load than the physical machine, the hardware, and the software that is running on it can support, then what will happen? Your application will become very slow. Okay? Or soon you will see gradually it becomes irresponsible. It may stop working around. Okay? तो ये सारी इशू आपको देखने में मिलेंगी. Now, Python is something which is okay. It is for visualization purpose. You prepare a report, you present it to the people in the company that okay, these are the weak areas that we are lacking with. Now, these are the areas you build a story kind of thing around it. Okay, that these kind could be the reasons, and then you show with a very good and nice chart that here we can, what we can do with the company's business, for example, to make it more reachable to the people, right? Or to get more profit. Okay. But that doesn't demand a very high scalability. It won't have a very high, hits per second. That means number of users who are trying to use the application per second. Probably you are the one who is just showing in a projector to the management team, or it could be shared with a group of people. However, there is a possibility that it could be integrated with a real application as a part of the reporting module, which is basically going to report lots of information about it. Okay, that is one thing. But even though the users of the reporting module may not be as huge as the number of users which are active users, which want to use the direct functionality which are offered by the application. Now, what happens when you have written your application in any of the language which promises a good scalability, whether it's a Java, it's a C# or C++ for that matter. So it will give you benefits in terms that you can always add extra components of hardware, more computer, more servers, and then whatever software that you develop is running under an application server, is the software application I'm talking about, it would be replicated. And that replication is called as a cluster. So now if I see an application as a single person doing something, then this cluster is a group of 10 people doing the same thing. That means your capability has increased. There could be one person who is sitting on the front who is just going to distribute the incoming hits or request to these 20 people. ठीक है, इसको हम क्या बोलते हैं? जो लोड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का काम करता है, वो that could be hardware and it could be simply an Apache Tomcat server. ठीक है, Apache server. ठीक है, तो लोड डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर हो गया ये. This is a load distributor which is going to distribute the load among different servers for the same task. Because say for example, one server has a ability to serve 100 hits per second. I have a requirement of 1000 hits per second, so probably I will need 10 servers, right? There is something. Now, this is the situation where we need scalability. At the peak hours, when the business is growing, when it's a festive season for e-commerce application, what you will need? You will need extra machine to come up and softwares to be put into that, which may work as a cluster to your application which is already running, so that your ability to take the load may increase. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे जो आपके इस तरह की लैंग्वेज होती है, जावा होती है, C# होती है, इन लैंग्वेजेस का बहुत बड़ा रोल होता है. ठीक है, तो पर्पस आपको समझना है. अब यहाँ पे क्या हुआ कि जावा जब सबसे पहली बार जब इंट्रोड्यूस की गई, C++ was already there. It's a very good object-oriented programming language, no doubt about it. So whatever I am discussing today is something which you will see in the later classes coming in small bits. Okay. So don't worry if something is something which is going beyond your understanding. Okay. Those things will come again. So when Java was introduced, what happened with Java? See, C++ is a language. If you try to compile the language, you will get an exe file directly for Windows. C++ काम किया ना? क्या करते हैं आप उसको जब रन करते हैं अपने आप जैसे ही आपने उसको रन किया वो रन कर गया और क्या हुआ अगर उसके आप फोल्डर में जाके देखना चाहें तो .exe फाइल उस नाम से बन जाएगी जिस नाम से आपकी क्लास होगी करेक्ट इसमें मेन मेथड होगा आपको ठीक है तो क्या हुआ जो exe फाइल बनी the file the executable file that you are getting after compilation of a C++ program that is very specific and dependent to the machine means I'm talking about the operating system. Then the operating system deals with whether your machine is a 32-bit machine or a 64-bit machine, or what kind of processor it is having, all those things. But ideally, I am talking about the operating system. Okay. If you are trying to compile a program in C++, you are going to get an exe file. Same is not true with Linux or Unix. You won't get exe file with Linux or Unix. Okay. There you will probably get a .out file. ठीक है उसको रन करने का तरीका भी क्या होता है पहले आप डॉट लगाते हैं फिर एक बैकस्लैश लगाते हैं फिर फाइल नेम .out लिखते हैं देन एंटर की देन दैट फाइल विल रन इट्स एनीवन ऑफ यू इज फैमिलियर विद यूनिक्स और लाइनक्स ठीक है सो the file that you get after the compilation which is executable which can give some output that file in C++ depends upon the platform and by platform I am talking about the operating system and everything which is beneath ठीक है what Java people did was they break down this compilation process and execution process into two things. One is they say that we are going to compile into some intermediate form, right? That will not be the machine dependent code. Rather, that is something in between, and that's what we call as a bytecode. You will call that as a bytecode. Now, that means if we try to compile a Java program, we will get a file with an extension not exe, not out, but with an extension .class. Okay. Normally, if you have a C++ file, so the extension that you give for a C++ code, which is written in English language, you will write the extension as CPP, right? For C.C. Similarly, when you write a code for Java, you will give the extension .java. And when this .java file is compiled using the Java compiler, you will get something as an output, another file which has got the extension .class file. I will show everything practically. See, whatever we are talking about, we will see each and every bit practically. Okay? Don't worry about that. Okay? So that's why I am not distinguishing the lab and the theory part. Rather, I will try to provide you more theory part, and within that, we are going to do the lab. And that is the reason why I am suggesting you to bring your laptops, those who are coming physically, and those who are online, they also sit on the laptop. I mean, they must join the meeting by the laptop. Because whenever I will write a code, I will give the demo by writing the code just in front of you. You can run the same code, you can type the same code at your background, and you can see whether it's working or not. If there are any problems, we can discuss online. ठीक है ऐसे भी जब ऑफलाइन में कुछ बच्चे ही आ पाएंगे तो ऑनलाइन वालों को सेपरेट लैब तो मिल नहीं पाएगी सबको एक पेज पे रखना है हमको ठीक है so we will try to have instead of 2 theory class we will try to have say 4 theory classes per week a kind of combined class but we will try to have both lab and theory together ठीक है so what does Java does it gives you after compilation a file with the name .class file let me open something to write and then so that the people who are sitting online can also see. Otherwise, if I will write on the board, then ये तो मुसीबत है यार. People who have joined online, can you see my screen? I'm not sure, I think.
No, sir.
Okay, just hold on. Now, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, we were talking about C++, right? When you compile a C++ code, when you compile C++ code, then basically you get a platform dependent output, executable file. This is platform dependent executable file. You will get directly. For example, for Windows, you are going to get .exp file. Okay. For Unix or Linux, because Linux is another flavor of Unix itself, so you will get the .out file. There are other formats also available. Okay. Can someone tell me what are the executable formats for Windows? All the executable formats. Dot. That's document file, right? That is an application. exe is one, right? Anything else? .bat, batch file, .bat. क्या होता है bat file? उसमें आप DOS कमांड लिखते हैं, right? जैसे dir आपने करा, ठीक है? You move to a specific directory, ठीक है? Then you open a particular directory. You write commands one by one, a sequential way of command. So that is what we call as a batch. ठीक है? So you write batch programs in that, and you can double click on it, and it will run. .bat file. Similarly, corresponding to the bat file, we have got .sh file, shell file in Linux or Unix. Okay, just write down. This is, of course, not Java, but this is going to help you in your interviews. sh file, shell file, sh. Okay, .sh file, shell file. Basically, this stands for shell, and this stands for batch. Whereas exe stands for executable, and .out stands for output, as we can interpret it. Batch file. Why it is called batch? Because you write the commands in a linear order. If you have written first to open a directory, the directory will open. If you have written to run a particular file inside the directory, then that particular file will run. So step by step. Okay. Similarly, we have got shell file. Okay. In Linux. So C++, when we try to compile using the C++ compiler, you are habitual to use that screen, which is the editor window, right? So you don't see what happens behind. But if you go to the folder where you have created the .cpp file, you will see a corresponding file with .exe with the same name appears, right? Why? Because it has created an executable file. That's a compilation, as well as the complete compilation is done in the machine language, the language which your platform understands. Because you might have written instructions to print something on the console, on the screen, or you might have written something to get input from the keyboard. So the hardware is linked with the operating system. The operating system has to send some low-level instructions to the hardware to do all these operations, right? If that operating system changes, that means the whole program which that operating system understands, that has to change, right? That's why C++, when it's compiled in exe for Microsoft Windows, it's compiled in .out file for Linux or Unix. Whatever the versions of Linux, doesn't matter, right? So Now, in Java, what happens? You have got here for C++, you have got the extension .cpp, right? The code extension, the file that you create. For Java, you have got the extension .java. Clear? Now, say for example, I have created a file, my first program .java. Say I have created one program, my first program .java. We will do this practically. Don't worry. Everything till the last class, we are going to do everything practically. Okay. So this is the file where you will write certain code. Just like C++, you will create a class. Inside the class, there will be functions. We will discuss what is a function, what are statements, those things in detail. This is just an introductory class, so I am going a little, more than what is probably known to a very new person. So you will write some code here. Okay. The code are typically set of instructions. Set of instructions for doing something, right? Whatever. Now, what I will do, I will use a command. Say, for example, I have got C prompt. I will use a command Java C. C means compiler. So there you will get a command after the installation of the JDK, of course. You will see how to install the JDK also. Don't worry about it. Okay? So you will get a command Java C. Then you will provide the name of the file. My first program.java. And then you will press the enter key. Okay? Worried that you are not getting a good interface as you were getting in C++, where you can write the code, there are line numbers, there are formatting and everything. Don't worry, we have much better IDEs, platforms to help that out in Java. Okay? Even the similar kind of platform you will find for Microsoft people also, those who develop in C# and ASP.NET, all those things. Okay? So you have a very good platform for that. Initially we are learning, so we will start with a very basic thing. Okay? So you will say, you will type Java C, that is you are trying to use Java compiler as a command, just like you use dir for directory in the same way. But you will get this after the installation of the JDK, not before that. Then you will type the name of the program with the .java extension. As soon as you press the enter key, if there are no compilation error. Compilation error means if you have written anything wrong in the program, just like C++, you will get an indication that what line contains the error, what could be the possibility of the error, all that information, and you have to fix that problem, right? If there is HTML में तो कुछ देता ही नहीं है, वो तो चुपचाप बैठा रहेगा और आपको सिर्फ रिजल्ट नहीं शो करेगा. HTML में कुछ नहीं शो करता है, ठीक है, क्योंकि HTML कंपाइल नहीं होती है. HTML लैंग्वेज कंपाइल नहीं होती है, वो ब्राउजर के अंदर रन करती है. HTML runs within the browser. That's not a compiled language. You don't need to compile it, right? I will come to it. Don't worry. Okay, just you will not see if there is a mistake. For example, you are trying to build a table and you miss the table, one of the tags or the closing tag, for example, you won't see the table coming. It will just show the empty space over there, right? But when you go for a compiled language, okay, then you will see the compilation error, because the compiler is trying to convert it to a code which the operating system understands. And if there is a problem, it will give you information about it that this code cannot be compiled. I'm not able to compile this code, so don't expect me to run it. Fix the problem, come back, try to compile again, and then I will run your application. Okay, clear है बात? So C++ से आपने कंपाइल किया था तो क्या मिला था आपको? exe फाइल मिली थी. यहाँ पे आप कंपाइल कर रहे हैं, when you use the Java C to compile a Java program, which is by the name, for example, my first program .java. The Java extension is the extension for Java program that you write, right? Then you will, when you open the directory, and if everything compiles successfully, there is no compilation error. There is no compilation error. then you will see in the same directory there is a file that is created with the name my first prog class. If there is no error, of course. If there is error, then you will see the error. You will have to fix the error. Repeat the step of the compilation again. And then if it remains silent, it just show you a C prompt or whatever directory you are, the prompt of the directory. It is silent. Then that means the compilation is done successfully. If that prompt appears again. Similarly, if you are in Linux, in a home directory, you will see symbol something like this. If you are in a root directory, you will see some symbol something like this, right? Instead of prompt. Okay? So if that appears, then that's an indication that the compilation is successful. Okay? In that case, if you open the directory, you will find a same name file with a .class extension. Now, this code which is generated, this is a compile code. But this compile code is not compiled in the language which the machine understands. It is compiled into something which is called as a bytecode. Bytecode. This is compiled into something which is called as a bytecode. See, if people are joining late, guys, those who are joining late know that once I start the class, I am not able to see, the Meet screen. So please try to join early. Okay. Now, when we have compiled this Java program, it has converted to a file with the extension .class, and that file is not a machine-dependent program, machine-dependent code, but rather that's a bytecode. You can assume that it's a third-party virtual code. It's a virtual code made for a virtual machine. That machine is not existent. That's not for a Linux machine. That's not for a Windows machine, right? It's not for a Mac machine. It's rather for a virtual machine. It's for a virtual machine, a non-existent machine. So this bytecode is for, I will say it's for virtual machine. Virtual machine is a term that you will hear again soon. This is made for virtual machine, right? Now what I can do is, the Java promises that you take this file, .class file. Doesn't depend that you have compiled the program in a Windows environment or a Linux environment or a Mac environment or whatever machine. You take this file and take it to some other machine, some other platform, some other operating system based machine. You try to run this file will run. This file is going to run. We won't rather say run, we say that this file will interpret. This file is going to interpret, I-N-T-E-R-P-R-E-T. Interpret. Interpret means translate. Translate. So I have told you that this bytecode is for a virtual machine. It's not for a Windows machine. It's not for a Linux machine. It's not for a Mac machine or whatsoever. This is something which is for a virtual machine that is non-existent. But I can always take it to any of the set platforms, and then I can interpret it, and it will give you the output. So that means it will be translated at the runtime depending on the platform from this bytecode to the machine dependent code which that machine can execute. Getting the point? This bytecode is something which is for a virtual machine. It's not for a Windows machine. It's not for a Linux machine. It's not for a Mac machine. Or maybe the new operating system, say I think Google is also coming with a new operating system, right? It's not for that particular operating system. It's for a virtual machine that is non-existent. But when you take this particular .class file to any of the platform XYZ, any of the operating systems, even for Android, don't have a doubt about it. Okay? But there is another story with Android. Okay, so I won't get into that direction. Straightforward. इस पे बेस्ड है वो एक डिफरेंट स्टोरी है. ठीक है? Basically, it's an operating system. If you want to run anything on the Android, then also you will have to convert the thing into what? Its platform, which that particular operating system, that basically understands. Android is a very limited operating system, which has very scarcity of resources, right? So there may be a lot of ifs and buts with that. But yes, it's an operating system. Theoretically, you can take the .class file, it can run on Android platform as well. Okay, any operating system. Don't worry about it. Okay? And that process of execution is basically not called as execution, but it is called as interpretation, because you are converting from bytecode to the native code which that particular operating system understands. Ready? So that is why we call it interpretation. Okay? No, this is a two-step process now. First is the compilation, the second is the interpretation. You have seen the command for the compilation. Now let me write down the command for interpretation. Once this file.class file is generated, C prompt will come again. What you have to say? You have to say Java now. You have to type Java. Space the name of the file. My first prog. You don't have to put the dot extension, dot class extension. It will automatically understand that you are talking about a file which has got extension dot class, which has to be interpreted. Okay? Clear? You will just say Java, the name of the file without an extension. Okay? Now you will see the output printed over here. For example, if you have written a program to print something on the console, say hello world, you will see hello world being typed on the console. Okay? So there are two steps. One is the compilation, the other is the interpretation. Whereas with the C++, there was just one step, compilation, and that produces the file which is executable file. That is platform dependent file. Here in Java, Java is not a compiled language like C++. It's a compiled and interpreted language. So let me write down. Java is a compiled and interpreted language. So Java has got both the things. It can compile and then it has to be interpreted. Okay? C++ is purely compiled language. C++ is purely compiled language. Okay? Whereas your HTML, we just talked about it, right? HTML, it is purely interpreted language. What happens? You type a code in HTML, okay? You start the form type, right? Then the header and the body. Within the body, you create table, you insert something for the image, right? Image source, something, right? You create some buttons in HTML. Now that code is written something and is placed as a .html file in the server machine remotely. When you request for that file is transferred. That information as a text is transferred to your machine, and your machine has got the browser, which is acting as a client. Now your browser translates it at the runtime and shows the effect, whether it's a Mozilla browser, it's a Chrome browser, Internet Explorer, Edge, whatsoever. Okay. It is reading that code. Okay, you are starting the form from here to here. Then you have got a body. Then you have got an image. Okay, first I have to put an image. So it will make a placeholder for the image for whatever size you have described in the length and the width. Right? It will put a placeholder. The image has also come along with the HTML code. It is going to your browser. Is going to put that image on the screen at that particular location. So this is happening, a kind of translation is happening, right? So the code browser reads, the HTML code is read by the browser, and then it is translated and the effect is shown on the screen. That means HTML is a purely interpreted language. It's not a compiled language. C++ is a purely compiled language. Java is a compiled and interpreted language. HTML is a purely interpreted language. What about Python? Typically, you use it in the independent mode. That means it's an independent language, but it is possible to create executable versions to give a little scalability, performance. ठीक है, क्योंकि interpretation में क्या हो रहा है? When a language is a purely independent language, what happens? The translation is happening at the runtime. It has to show the result at the runtime also. So translation भी हो रहा है और उसका effect भी show कर रहा है. So translation का time तो extra गया ना? The time that will be used in the translation or the interpretation, that is an extra work that someone has to do. For example, the browser has to do in the case of HTML, right? Correct? C++ doesn't need interpretation. It will just create a file which is machine dependent. So platform, that means the operating system will use that code to show the effect. No need of translation. Java stands in between. It gives you two steps. When you can compile the code, then you can take the code to any platform and then you can interpret. This is how you get platform independability. You say that Java program is platform independent. That means if you have written the program, you have tested your program in Windows environment, okay? The next day you think that, okay, the cost of the hosting on the Windows machine, the server is quite high. That is a normal thing. So I want to move to some platform, even if you go for a EC2, that is Amazon Cloud, okay? They will give you images of different, platforms, whether you want a Windows hosting platform or you want a Linux hosting platform. You will notice that the cost of the Windows is higher than the Linux version. Of course, it's not an open source. It's a proprietary thing, right? Whereas Linux is a very, very powerful tool, but it doesn't give you so much of convenience of use. However, developers are not, worried about the convenience. They are worried about the performance. Okay? So lots of companies they put their code, their code on the server machines of the Linux. Okay. You have coded your application in the Windows platform. Now you want to move it for some time. You have run in the Windows server. Now you want to move it to Apple Linux platform. No worries. Your .class file is platform independent. So you will club all those files together as a library in a kind of a zip bag. Okay? Those files has got some name, and then you will just port it to the new server, and it will start working over there. Not as simple as I say. बस आपने उठा के डाल दिया, ठीक है? But this is obviously a workable solution that works. ठीक है? Clear है? जैसे आप कहते हैं ना, SQL पढ़ा किसी ने? SQL में कहते हैं ना कि SQL लैंग्वेज जो है वो database independent है, right? SQL is a database independent language. Whether you type in a Oracle or you type in a MySQL or some other database, it will work for all, right? What about stored procedures? What about certain specific type of the elements which are specific to the database itself? Migration is not that easy. At least here, when I talk about the Java platform, migration is still easier than that. ठीक है? Possible is no doubt. लोग करते हैं, no doubt. It's still not that tough, but yes, there will require some kind of expertise to make things work, because you are moving it to a new server. Then the hosting platform also has got some software platform which is going to run your code. That platform also changes. ठीक है? उसमें तो उसके अंदर भी changes हो सकते हैं. ठीक है? Database का movement हो सकता है. कई सारे जो integration के tools होते हैं उनमें movement हो सकता है. ठीक है? So there are things which may change, but ultimately it will work out. ठीक है? So the first thing that you get with Java, and that is the main reason why Java was introduced at first place, although you had C++ and the languages like that, which were strong languages, was platform independence. Platform independence. That means you compile your code in any language, then you can archive them, zip them in certain formats. You can move them to a different operating system platform, and there also you have a promise that it will run. You don't have to compile it again. However, you will have to interpret it. That means some work still has to be done. ठीक है? Now, compiled language. If I start comparing compiled languages. हाँ. अच्छा हाँ पहले भी कुछ ना कुछ पूछा था ना बताइए. Difference is that interpretation happens at the runtime. Compilation happens not at the runtime. You compile the code at a different moment and then you run it at a different moment. For example, you have created a C++ program, .exe file is created, then you run that exe file. You see the screen which is editor window of the C++ that has both the things together. It compiles and automatically picks up the exe file and runs it for you. Otherwise, if you go for a Linux environment, you will have to compile separately. Then you will get the .out file. Then you will have to run that .out file. Okay. Interpretation means something which is happening. Translation of the code from a virtual machine code, which is a bytecode, to something which is native to the operating system, which the operating system understands, and that is happening at the runtime. It is costing you with some time. ठीक है? Clear हो गया? क्या नाम है भाई आपका? है? शोएब. कुछ समझ में आया शोएब? आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा बताओ यार. नहीं आ रहा है. अच्छा देखो पढ़ तो अच्छा तुम आगे आओ पहले. उतने पीछे बैठोगे तो पीछे ही रह जाओगे. आगे आओ. Guys who are online also, see, I will tell you a very honest thing. I won't lie that the subject is very easy. That will be a lie. Subject is going to be difficult. But we both can make it easy. I have the expertise. Okay? I can clear all your doubts. I can help you while coding. But the thing is that you will have to be present here. You have to listen. If you have any doubt, keep asking. Don't feel shy. ठीक है? वैसे काम नहीं चलेगा. कहावत याद है जिसने की शर्म उसके फूटे कर्म. है ना? तो उससे काम नहीं चलेगा. अल्टीमेटली आप लोग को काम करना है. आप FCA करोगे, then you will go to the industry and you will work. अगर यहाँ पे आप अपने को रगड़ लोगे तो वहां पे आपका काम आसान हो जाएगा. वहां पे आप धक्के नहीं खाओगे. वरना क्या होगा, वहां 2 साल धक्के खाओगे. आपके जो साथ के बंदे जो IIT से पढ़ के आ रहे हैं, NIT से पढ़ के आ रहे हैं, उन्होंने आप कुछ नहीं कराया है. उनके टीचर्स ने उनको सिर्फ रगड़ा है. ठीक है? और कोई फर्क नहीं है आप में. इंटेलेक्ट आपका भी वही है, उनका भी वही है. ये गलतफहमी है कि वो बड़ी मेहनत करने के आदी होते हैं. मेहनत करने के आदी होते सच है. जेईई में बहुत हाई स्कोर करते हैं, मेहनत करने के आदी होते हैं. दैट इज ट्रू. इसलिए उनको पिकअप करने में ज्यादा मुश्किल नहीं होती. आपको सिर्फ इतना करना है कि उस लेवल की मेहनत को करने का अपने को आदी बनाना है. ठीक है? एंड देन ट्रस्ट हो जाएगा. ठीक है? तो अभी जैसे ये वीडियो लेक्चर है, मैं आपको कुछ YouTube के ग्रुप भी दिखाऊंगा. मेरे अपने ही ग्रुप में यही के लेक्चर्स के हैं और मैं आपके लेक्चर्स को भी होस्ट कर दूंगा. ठीक है? आप इसको रिवाइज करके देख सकते हो. ठीक है? यू ऑलवेज हैव द अपॉर्चुनिटी टू गो बैक एंड सी द होल क्लास, provided there is no any problem in recording, then only then it's possible. ठीक है? Sometimes it happens, recording fails. In that case, we are helpless. But you have the backup lectures, which are already hosted on the YouTube platform. ठीक है? आपको बात मिल जाएंगे. So just you have to be present here. मैं कोई ऐसी बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ जो एकदम से बिगनर हो उसको समझ में ना आए. ठीक है? इतना सबको पता है कि भाई लैंग्वेज होती है, उसको कंपाइल करना पड़ता है. कंपाइल करने के बाद वो आउटपुट देता है. अब कंपाइलेशन क्या होती है वो मशीन पे डिपेंड करती है. आपका ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम कौन सा है, बाकी चीजें हार्डवेयर की डिटेल्स ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम मैनेज करता है. ठीक है? विंडोज है कि लाइनक्स है, कौन सी मशीन है, तो उसके हिसाब से आपने उसको कंपाइल करा. तो मैं ये कह रहा हूँ जो C++ लैंग्वेज है उससे जब आप कंपाइल करेंगे तो जो प्रोग्राम जो फाइल आपको मिलेगी रन करने के लिए वो .exe फाइल विंडोज के लिए मिलेगी. लाइनक्स के लिए .out एक्सटेंशन होता है इसका, उसको आप रन कर सकते हैं. तो वो कंपाइल्ड होती है, मतलब मशीन लैंग्वेज में डायरेक्टली कन्वर्टेड होती है. अब रन करते वक्त आपको उसको ट्रांसलेट करने के लिए एक्स्ट्रा टाइम वेस्ट नहीं करना पड़ेगा. मतलब आपके जो सिस्टम रन कर रहा है उसको एक्स्ट्रा टाइम वेस्ट नहीं करना पड़ेगा बैकग्राउंड में, ठीक है। जो इंटरप्रेटेड लैंग्वेज होती है जैसे HTML हो गया, पूरी की पूरी HTML एज अ टेक्स्ट आती है, साथ में उसके इमेजेस आते हैं, देन यू हैव गॉट एनी अदर थिंग्स, से व्हाटएवर द डेकोरेशन दैट यू हैव डन, राइट, then you have instruction for showing the submit button, the cancel button, and all those buttons, right? So everything happens at the runtime. That is the slowest language. That is the slowest language because it is translating everything and showing you the output of the result at the runtime. ठीक है, तो सारा उसका जो काम हो रहा है, उसकी एनर्जी जो हो रही है वो किसमें खर्च हो रही है? ट्रांसलेशन में ज्यादा खर्च हो रही है। तो कंपाइल्ड लैंग्वेज की बात करें तो इसमें ट्रांसलेशन क्या है? नील है, यू डोंट हैव अ ट्रांसलेशन। और इंटरप्रिटेशन, इसको क्या बोलते हैं? इंटरप्रिटेशन। नहीं बोलते हैं कि भाई डिप्लोमेट्स है, दे आर टेकिंग इंटरप्रेटर्स विद देम when the two heads of the countries they meet, okay, they have got interpreters who know both the languages, so that our head is going and he's speaking Hindi, say for example to US president, then the counterpart, the interpreter which is going with our president or prime minister, he is going to translate that to English, right? And that's how things work. So there is an interpreter in between, right? So if this interpretation is not happening, that means you have got a high speed. You have got a very high speed during the execution of that program, right? So for the language which are compiled language, the interpretation is nil. That means they are fastest in speed. Then comes the language like Java, which is both compiled and interpreted. So they try to do a lot of work during the compilation process, and the work which is dependent on the operating system functionalities, they cannot be compiled because it's a bytecode. It's for virtual machine, not for Windows, not for Mac, not for Linux. So that is done at the interpretation or the translation time. Okay. So Java is both compiled and interpreted language. And then comes languages like HTML, which are purely interpreted. Normally you run your Python also in interpretation mode only. Okay. So these are the fastest even today. This is the slowest. Okay. Even today, the programs which are real-time applications, the defense applications, they are still made in C++ kind of languages. Okay. They won't prefer Java over C++. See, everything has got every language has got its own importance. Java has got its own importance. Python has got its own importance, right? Python के लिए डाटा साइंस आपको काम करना है तो आप कहेंगे भाई मैं Python में करूंगा, Java में नहीं करूंगा। हालांकि Java में लाइब्रेरीज हैं उसकी, उतनी सफिशिएंट नहीं है, ठीक है, उतनी आसानी से नहीं कर पाएंगे, बट देयर आर प्रोविजंस और यू हैव द प्रोविजन टू कोड एवरीथिंग ऑन योर ओन। ये तो कर ही सकते हैं, करेक्ट? So every language has the possibility to do every kind of task, but depending upon the privileges that you get with a particular language and the type, the way it works, you may have a different choice for different tasks. Clear? So if you have got a defense application, a real-time application, you will probably choose C++. But if you have got a application which is probably going to run on internet, where a lot of number of users are going to hit per second, you need a kind of scalability. You need portability that at one time you may host it at on the Windows machine, and the next day, if you mind changes, you can go to a Linux machine. If you want a portability, then you won't choose C++. Rather, you will choose languages which are compiled and interpreted like Java. Okay? And when you do not have the performance issue at all, like you want to get some information from the data to present the loopholes in the system or the process where you can improve upon to make your business grow, a kind of reporting thing, probably you can go with the Python because they are good in that. Okay? So when Java 1.1 was introduced, the first version of Java, it was hugely criticized for its speed because its speed was utterly disgusting. Okay, very frankly. but it was providing you platform independence. One of the major tool which is important even for enterprise applications which are hosted on over the net, over the internet, or even a single network also when there are a lot of users. Okay? Scalability is something which is very, very important here. Okay? Do not say that C++ is not scalable. Okay? उनके भी अपनी techniques हैं. Okay? But there are limitations. There are limitations. You will learn when you are going to discuss about server-side programming. Then you will see how Java or ASP.NET is going to help you, or C# is going to help you in that direction. ठीक है? तो एक तरफ हो गई आपकी fastest language, which are purely compiled language. एक तरफ हो गई slowest language, which are interpreted language. In between, there is something which is called as compiled and interpreted language, which works in 2 steps, and that is what we have Java. And because of this compiled and interpreted nature, it's platform independent. It's platform independent language. You create a .class file, take the .class file as a zip archive file, okay, in certain format, take it to any machine, it will run. Okay? Now 1.1, Java 1.1, when it was introduced, it was criticized, as I told you. Then these Java people, they start lots of optimization in the language. And one of the techniques of optimization is they try to move most of the tasks which could be done at the compile time towards the compilation phase. And they try to leave very less towards the interpretation phase. क्योंकि इंटरप्रिटेशन में रन टाइम ट्रांसलेशन हो रहा है ना, अगर हम यहाँ के लिए कम काम छोड़ेंगे तो ज्यादा फोकस आपके आउटपुट पे लगेगा. जो कंप्यूटेशन हो रहा है उसमें आपका रिसोर्स सीपीयू यूटिलाइजेशन होगा, मेमोरी यूटिलाइजेशन होगा, राइट, रिसोर्सेज का यूटिलाइजेशन होगा, टाइम का यूटिलाइजेशन होगा, राइट. So Java tried to improve itself, and it has gradually improved. It is very, very close in performance to any of the compiled languages. It is very close, but still there is some part which needs interpretation, and that will always be creating the difference between a purely compiled language and a compiled and interpreted language. Clear है बात? थोड़ा difference तो रहेगा भाई, ठीक है? And we have to live with it because we are trying to bargain. We are trying to bargain portability or platform independence and other aspects with performance to a little extent. I won't say that we are going to lose huge in performance terms. No, very little, but still there is a little loss. अगर आप किसी जावा के बंदे से पूछिए कि भाई जावा में क्या प्रॉब्लम है, तो कभी ये नहीं बोलेगा कि भाई जावा कमजोर है. ऐसा लगता है जैसे वो जावा की मार्केटिंग करने बैठे हैं. ऐसा नहीं है, जावा में भी प्रॉब्लम है. ठीक है? Even the best student of the class might have a problem, maybe a behavior problem, maybe some other problem, maybe he is not a good speaker, maybe he doesn't have a good English communication skill. ठीक है? प्रॉब्लम तो सब में होती है. ठीक है? But you bargain. If I am a recruiter, I will say what fits in my company. ठीक है? कई बार ऐसा क्या होता है कि कुछ मीडियोकर लेवल की कंपनी है, वो आईआईटीज के पास नहीं जाएंगे because they know their expectations are quite high. They will demand huge, and if those demands are not met, even though they pay initially very high, they are going to quit. They will get the job offer. ठीक है? So there is a scope for everything. ठीक है? So this is clear. Any questions? People who are online, any questions? All clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. क्या हुआ, आज के लिए काफी हो गया? रोका जाए?
सर बहुत है.
हैं?
सर काफी हो सकता है, आज के लिए काफी है.
काफी है. रखी
जी सर. सर धीरे धीरे आदत लगेगी ना सर अभी.
नहीं, मैं पूछ रहा हूँ, तुम सीआर हो ना क्लास के?
जी सर, जी सर.
तुम्हें ये बोलने की परमिशन नहीं है, ठीक है?
ओ सर.
चलो ठीक है, आज के लिए रोक रहे हैं. We will try to have class for around 1 hour to 1 and a half, 1 hour 15 minutes and so on every day. so that little you digest and you are able to understand things. For those who are online, your attendance is automatically recorded with a plugin. So if you can see here, I have got your attendance. Once I will shut down the system, your attendance will come into with me as a file. I will also detailed about the rest of the attendance process. What we have to do to make sure that attendance is not missed for anyone in the next class. So the idea is we will go with slowly with the small classes, and we will try to have the class almost every day. ठीक है? चाहे आप online कर रहे हो चाहे offline कर रहे हो. Try to sit with a machine. Next time when you guys come for the offline class, please try to come with the laptop. मजा नहीं आएगा भाई, आप बता रहे हैं, ठीक है? ऑफलाइन के साथ कम से कम ये बेनिफिट आपको है कि आप जो भी करेंगे आपको मुझे यही कहीं आप दिखा सकते हैं सिस्टम. 1 मिनट के अंदर मैं आपकी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व कर दूंगा, जो आपको शायद 2 दिन लगे करने में, सॉल्व करने में. ठीक है? Okay, guys. ठीक है, so we are stopping the class over here. I will announce the next class soon. Today is just an introductory class. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. You may log off.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. बैठो जो ऑफलाइन है बैठो थोड़ी देर.